and
Just well, we've now gone live because we're starting to talk about real stuff. So I thought we'd share that. And we have someone else has joined us. Good morning,
Hi guys.
good morning.
Yarshov.
Yash Vardhan. Just
there.
call me Yash.
Yarsh. Say hi to Mark.
Yeah.
Mark. Yarsh. Mark.
Good morning, Yash.
Okay. Where on the
Yeah.
planet do you reside, my friend?
New Delhi, India.
Oh, cool.
Well, welcome. So, we were just Mark and I were talking a little bit about. We're carrying on the conversation we had yesterday about ghost guilds. Essentially, guilds that are constructed more algorithmically. You may not even be aware that you're a part of this cluster of folks, but you're now you're collated with a bunch of other folks. Because you share there's some core competencies, your skill acumen is at a certain level, however that may be. But we were discussing, and this was part of the conversation yesterday, that potentially one of the challenges to this org design is if it's just exclusively about the work, we might be missing the real kind of the meaty part that keeps together these organizations, which is something other than work. The social aspect, for lack of a better term. So, have you been working with guilds or org design at all, Yarsh? What's your take on things?
Yeah. So in the last week's milestone, I was working on guilds.
Okay.
So and I had suggested something like creating groups for each type of community. Like we have a worker group that focuses on workers' needs, a requester group that focuses on requester needs, and other sorts of groups that handle the friction between, let's say, the clash of ideas that would happen in these separate groups. Like I had suggested an arbitration group that would probably handle issues that arise of, let's say, from compensation about, like workers would want more compensation per task, and requesters wouldn't be so happy to pay more money. So something like that.
So what prompted that?
And I essentially
So what kind
yesterday's meeting, so I thought
of thinking, my friend? I mean, it sounds like you're looking at functional guilds. So what
yeah.
along that thinking? What compelled you to go that route?
Well, because I've seen that when like let's say if you're creating a very big guild of where it's the base is very fat, like you have a lot of people there, then the efficiency of such an organization tends to go down. So if you have, let's say, slightly smaller ones with more dedicated purposes and pre-specified functionalities, and that you're supposed to do these 5 things, you're just supposed to focus on those, then I thought maybe like the overall efficiency of the entire guild structure would be slightly better.
So you're envisioning then a whole system of guilds, kind of a la Dune, then as that sort of process. Is that how you're seeing it? Like it goes.
Yeah, like everyone has some purpose, and together they can work in a proper, cohesive manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems quite interesting.
Back. Al says, did it just get cold there, Mark? Because you went all Arctic on us.
It's getting cooler.
Oh.
Yeah. We've been having snow for a few days, although it's not that much at this point.
We've got a little bit here as well, so
yeah,
it was nice. Al comments, you really likes your headphones. Very, very retro.
Thank you.
What's the temperature like there?
I beg your pardon?
What's the temperature like right now?
I don't actually know. It's probably like here it's -3 Celsius.
Oh, wow.
Good stuff.
So it's cool, but not too cold.
It's all a matter of perspective now.
Yeah, yeah.
What's it like in New Delhi?
Yeah.
on the sweltering side.
It's like about 10 degrees now and feels good.
Oh, that's cooler than I expected.
Yeah. Expected to be sweltering. So you're thinking about then in which everyone's part of a guild. You mentioned some of the functional. Then what about then the actual execution of work? Would you see then the guilds being grouped by going on tasks would have guilds? Would regions? How just whole hog? How would you see then the ecosystem replicating itself?
I'm really sorry. Can I ask you to repeat what you said last? Because your voice was just breaking throughout.
I was just saying, how do you see the ecosystem kind of like replicating itself? You see the next steps as guilds drawn along skills or tasks, geography. Just kind of curious that if you were to explode it, where would you take the whole guild idea?
I would say that my idea about this distribution of guilds would focus more on tasks. So let's say if everybody is more organized by what they do rather than where they're from or where their friends are from or stuff like that. So it's more, as you said, a more functional kind of view of guilds where everyone has, if you can do this thing, you're grouped together. So your functionalities would be the common factor between different guilds.
Then what do you think is the most pressing problem that a guild or the guild system then would be solving?
Well, what I thought that would solve is that, one, it becomes, as I said, more efficient because you don't have one particular guild doing a lot of stuff. So it's always, everyone is just focusing on exactly one task or like a couple of tasks that they have to do. So it's more efficient that way. And apart from that, I think it's kind of a more modular approach, so that if one person is doing something very wrong, then it doesn't affect the whole system.
Do you envision a world in which there's, I think image tasking is kind of the template we've been using. Do you see a system then in which you can have multiple guilds supporting a task? That there'd be some competition potentially?
There might be, yes, but I think then we'd have to come up with some appropriate way to handle as a arbitration group. So their job was primarily to deal with all sorts of conflict that happened between such groups. So that's just more of a high level and generalized kind of idea, but yeah, something more detailed and concrete.
So have you given any thought to the internal design of these orgs, how they're going to run, or how they're going to, are they organically created, or is there going to be an oligarchical foundation, or are they led by a posse of friends? How is it? Have you given any thought to that?
Honestly, no, I haven't, not yet.
No soup for you. Okay. So any questions then that you've been thinking about that you don't necessarily have answers, or that you like to throw out into the ether and see if it sticks?
Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to know what is like the general direction in which like everyone in the OpenGov system is gravitating towards, because I haven't been like checking back, and I missed the last meeting, as in the last OpenGov meeting, so I don't have a clear idea about what is actually happening right now.
I think so. I don't know a complete answer to that, but I think a lot of what we're talking about is maybe just one part of open government, and I think in the end it might be more about sort of worker relations and requester relations than a complete government system. But there may be other discussions out there that are more focused on the larger open government issues. But I'm not sure. Maybe Truca knows more detail about that.
Mark hit the nail on the coffin. There's no coffin here. The goal is the paper, or the goal is from all of this conversation is to ultimately generate, identify a problem, look at the solution, measure it, experiment with it, write it, present it. And Mark is kind of spot on. It's really kind of atomized. We are the modus operandi of this group is to look at micro tasks, and I think finally have kind of devolved the org conversation into those relationships. It's now reached this the balance of looking at micro tasks. Before, when you say org design, like everyone kind of goes up here. So we're looking at demo leadership and all these bigger organizational concepts, and they were very challenging to experiment against because demo wasn't fully functioning, and none of the other systems really lent itself to any of those larger questions of governance. They're either closed systems or they were mTurk or, and it didn't lend itself to really kind of getting into any of the meaty pieces. So I think we're in the right spot, and I think what Mark said, it's about relationships now. And that does, in a micro world, that is kind of governance. It really is. It's you're not going to fix voting and whatnot, but you're going to get preferences. You're going to get some of the basic DNA that we can build off of to ultimately influence what larger org design is going to look like. At least that's my take on things. But right now we're looking at the nitty and the gritty.
Okay.
So as you're thinking about it, the call from yesterday on YouTube. Take a look at it. Start looking at problems. I think there's obviously the obvious quality ones, and then there's pricing ones. But how do you deal with newbies and the cold start issue? How do you grow and develop talent within a community? There are a lot of problems that exist in the literature or that you're going to observe if you've been in any of these marketplaces that I think if you're very flexible with your idea of what org design is, org design can either influence or solve the problem in one form or fashion. So I think if you can kind of get in that mindset, I think that will greatly kind of accelerate your understanding of where we are and what we're looking to do.
Okay, I'll go through that other call as well. And and I'll read up a bit more. I think that will help.
Yeah, and there is, I think Ryan threw out a very general lit review. As soon as this call is over, I'll start compiling a wiki that's going to have our notes from last week, but also we'll start creating a depository of articles. So if you have some, put them in the channel, and we'll move the needle on some of those things. Speaking of moving the needle, Angela has joined us. Is it good morning, afternoon, evening, Angela?
It's afternoon now in cloudy England. Hey guys.
Normal England.
Hi there.
Mark, Angela, Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark.
Angela.
Nice to meet you.
Garsh, Angela.
Sorry, and who else is on the call?
Garsh?
And Garsh, hi.
Hey,
Garsh is
nice to meet you.
He's in New Delhi. Mark is in Pittsburgh. Angela's
awesome.
I'm in Vermont. We've covered the globe. Angela Allison says hello, by the way. She's
Hi,
on the
Allison.
Hi, Allison. She says hi.
Send me a virtual hug.
I will do so. So she's coming over to say hi.
Awesome. Hey, nice to see a smiley face.
She's very smiley.
Awesome.
So Angela, I don't know. Did you get a chance to check out the YouTube from yesterday? It's 2 hours of deliciousness.
I haven't looked through the 2 hours of deliciousness, no, but I did see the write-up that Ryan added to the channel. I apologize in advance for the noise from my 2-year-old. Sorry, guys.
That's one of the first things I do. Tasks. Microtasks. So yeah, it is normally I would say go to a certain point in the YouTube and you'll get the meat of it, but it was just one of those good moments where there was a good flow, a lot of ideas there.
Trigva, the link that you posted, the Google Hangout, is that's one we can click and watch after the event, or is there a separate YouTube one?
I dropped the YouTube link in, I think, either last night or this morning.
Okay, I can't see it. I don't know. Sorry,
Yeah,
can you?
I don't see it either, actually.
Okay, I may have.
I think when you popped in was the join the Hangout link.
Let's see. So it is. Oh, but it doesn't look YouTube, does it?
It's the comment with the 2 kale.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like I posted the wrong thing there.
Not to worry, not to worry. If you pop the YouTube in, I can have a listen to it while I'm doing some stuff this afternoon.
The link.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ideas, eh? And we just need to come up with some simple experiment to run in the time that we've got, eh? That was really unnatural. I'm Canadian. It didn't flow then. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm multitasking, which means I'm doing.
Yes, so there were a lot of ideas. I think we kind of, I don't want to say we coalesced on a few ideas, but I think we definitely considered the experimental opportunities of some of these ideas sort of as we were going, which might have been a useful approach.
Oh, there's definitely some coalescing.
Yeah, we coalesced a bit, but I don't know if we...
Good. We like it. Kind of whoever's active and moves it forward, great. Let's just carry on where you guys have it's good to make some decisions as you go along. And we don't all have to be there to make decisions, so we trust whoever's kind of in the call to get their ideas
in the room at the time.
and move us forward. I definitely am all for that.
And what was interesting is it's maybe a dark horsey in some regards, but it wasn't out of left field. I think it came out of a natural, we were kind of just poking holes in. I think the conversation really was shaped by basically the basic question. And the conversation was started riffing off that notion, which lent us to, there was the prevailing theme was more skills-based skills. I think Mark made the prescient observation that perhaps it should be more task-oriented skills. That you'll have like, the image processors and and that in that task orientation, then the idea kind of evolved. I think it was a riff between Teo and Mark about being in a ghost guild, which means you're part of a guild, you don't realize you're part of a guild. And I think the caveat now is we're probably not the time to rebrand it, but I think we've kind of come to the general understanding that right now we may not be talking about guilds, but it is the most convenient term to use right now.
Right. Are we talking more about kind of collectives that come together surrounding certain task types? Is that what you mean?
From a high level, yes. Yes, that it's...
Right. There are definitely a few features that we mentioned, and I guess a question... So I wasn't that familiar with the notion of what guilds meant in this community before that conversation, and so I sort of posed that question. I said, what do we mean by guilds, and what do we see as the purpose or the benefits of guilds, and is there a parallel in other areas such as gaming or something else that we're trying to take from? And it sounded like a lot of it was coming from gaming, which has some very different properties and some similar properties. And one important different property is that a lot of the games where guilds exist are games where groups of people work together to achieve a greater goal. And in a majority of cases, that's not what happens in this kind of microtask environment. a lot of people have a relationship just with a requester during their work, and then maybe they go and do a different task. And maybe they talk to each other a little bit to say that requester is not good or whatever it might be, but it's not as though their discussion of those things strictly benefits their performance on a task-by-task basis in general. And so that was something that we sort of, I think, thought about a little bit. And there are a lot of other issues that came up. I probably forget most of them. But I know that sort of a way that we thought about dealing with some of these things was to integrate certain rules into the formation of these, let's call them ghost guilds, where a few things might happen. So, for example, a ghost guild might be a group that's automatically selected, so computationally selected, based on some performance metric or some common metric among a group of workers. And let's, just for an example, let's say you're doing imaging tasks and you've done 100 imaging tasks. We might now think you're like a level 2 expert in imaging tasks. And so now you might sort of automatically be grouped with people of a similar level of sort of skill or experience in that field. And those people automatically get a different price for their imaging tasks because they have more experience. And requesters can specifically say, I need people of a certain level of quality, and their sort of relevant pricing comes out in accordance with that. So, they say, I need really good people for these imaging tasks. These are very important. I'm labeling babies in wedding photos. I don't want any of them to be wrong. And so they would get, they'd pay a little bit more to get better quality work or something like that.
Yeah, I like that. I absolutely agree that we should go ahead with the requester being able to choose whether he is okay with low quality, low price, mid quality, average price, or set a higher price for high quality. And that's something that we've been, I think rallying for ultimately. Yeah. Requesters want this functionality. With the guilds, though, I was just, sorry. 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
It still brings us then to this question of how do we define quality? What's in that secret sauce? But I think maybe we can solve that by having a lot of attributes in that criteria.
I think, so I agree, although I think a reasonable way to avoid that question is just to assume that quantity means quality. And I know that that's a bad assumption, but I think it's a safer assumption than most other ones, and I think it simplifies everything quite a lot. And maybe we can improve our quality metric a little bit later, but I think if we started by saying we're going to group everybody based on how many of each type of task you've done, and your groups can overlap, right? If you've done a lot of imaging tasks and a lot of HTML tasks, you're in part of 2 groups, and so on. But I think that might just be like a really, really easy, no complications way of starting that.
So
that brings us, I wonder if this brings us back to. Oh, sorry.
I was want to close out that point, because as soon as we say it's quality and quantity, hands are going to go up, and people will say, well, what about the cold starts? What about newbies? I don't want to dismiss them, but I'm okay with dismissing them and saying that's not really part of our functional group. But one's going to assume that guilds then, from a collective perspective, are going to have a way to accelerate folks, or
yes. I actually think
that could be
the cold start problem is not as big as it looks. Because I think even new people might come in and I mean, even after 5 tasks, we can start to make some assumptions about what they prefer. But these are not like very strict assumptions. We're not necessarily saying you can never do another kind of task. We're just saying, you've obviously shown that you do this a little bit better than other things that you've done so far, or something like that. And so I don't think that's actually too big of a problem. I think the bigger issue with cold start is like how to make sure people understand what they're dealing with well enough. So sort of like an onboarding system. And I know that that's been discussed a little bit, perhaps not so much I mean, that might not be sort of so much the focus of the things that we're talking about here, but I know that Michael and some of the other people have been talking about that a little bit. But Angela, you had something else you wanted to bring back to.
A couple of things. The cold start issue, I think, could be addressed by the kind of good practice tasks, test tasks, that could just, people could complete them, it would set them at a level, yeah. and they could just get the, kind of ranking based on their completion of those kind of good practice tasks, or whatever we want to call them, if they're gold tasks or test tasks.
Sure.
And those could be, we've talked about this in the past, where the guild or the group or the collective could work on developing these tasks. So kind of the group maintains the quality of the tasks. They become the guardians of kind of the quality. Yeah. And going back to the group structure, I mean, all of this, we have to keep in mind this is a global platform. There's requesters who ultimately, the prices they set for their tasks is market driven. If they can get something really cheaply done in India, they'll try and set the price really low. We need to really give this some thought, how we can ensure that everyone has a good standard of living based on where they're living. I don't think it should be equivalent across the globe.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe guilds could kind of play a role here, where, say, a requester in Switzerland posts a task. There's a set price that the guild sets how much this task costs in Switzerland for a Swiss requester. The money goes into a pool. Maybe it's somebody from India who does the task, where the cost of living is less, or somewhere like Vietnam. But they could do the task and still get a good wage for where they are. And then vice versa. I could see how it could be game, though. Say somebody, a requester pretends they're in India, posts a task for really cheap, gets somebody to do it, and then But I was thinking about that kind of guild, the role that guilds could play, where they could have kind of this bank of money, where the work, people wherever they're based would pay a fair wage for the work that they're getting done.
Yeah. I think this is really interesting. Also, we talked about this a little bit, although I think you're bringing up some new points. But one thing that we mentioned is maybe, I think a lot of the ideas around guilds are the idea that we've talked about so far, right? This idea that it's just like a group of people who agrees to do something. But I think actually it can be, because we have a paired relationship with every worker and every requester, the groups can be organized by Demo centrally. So we don't have to let people decide how much they want to get paid or anything like that. We can do all of that computationally, and we can computationally balance it. So for example, we don't need to make it so that some guy in the guild is a little bit more important in the guild and he gets more money because he's like doling out the tasks or whatever. It's more that we just agree that this group of workers is at a certain level of quality, sort of on a global scale. And then I think this thing of like how people in different contexts may have more money for tasks or less money for tasks, and similarly may expect more or less of a wage for a task, that can sort of be dealt with internally by matching guilds to workers. By matching guilds to requesters as much as possible, as well as possible. And I think there's some complications. For example, some requesters want to pay less than a reasonable minimum wage, and I think we should allow them to request that. But I think we should basically say, if you request below this price, and we'll publish the price, if you request below this price, you're probably not going to get any workers, right? We know that all our guild workers have a lot of good work that they don't need to do that really low-priced work. And there's a few people who are like outside of guilds who just don't want to do the whole guild thing, and they might do your work for you. But if you really want to get good work, you've got to pay at least the minimum wage. And then you start seeing sort of some benefits of that. But I think mandating the minimum wage, and then again, maybe mandating a contextual minimum wage for worker requester pairs in different contexts and so forth might be a way to get around some of the issues that you mentioned.
kind of one of the main issues with all of this that we come back to is kind of market forces.
Yeah.
If requesters can get something done cheaper on a different platform, why will they use Demo ultimately?
And less so, but what Mark is talking about, if we're going to continue the market conversation, if people are using Demo just to get cheap labor, then they're going to go there. That's what they're always going to be looking at. But if their mental model is now it's more skills based, and we start presenting it to them as, hey, you can get high quality work done here at a certain price, that's going to appeal to folks that have that approach. Those that are
it's tricky when we're talking about microtasks, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
But
Because once we
hard
move
to
the
know if
macro,
anyone cares about quality.
no, yeah, at this point.
But if you're looking at images and you're looking at, maybe we should just kind of keep that, because if you get the image wrong, there is a certain requirement of quality. Okay, so if you have a blue bird and someone puts in red robin, then you've got a cluster. You've created a problem now, and that will start to cascade. So if we stick with images and something where there is a right or a wrong, we can stick to some of those micro tasks where you can make that determination. That will probably help us influence this need for quality. I think that's kind of what you're saying. Yeah, we're microtasks. Where is the need for quality? I'm not arguing that. But we have to kind of maybe put ourselves in a position where of all the microtasks where quality is needed, this is probably the most obvious one. But yeah, you guys are right. I mean, these are microtasks. But ultimately, if we can create a scalable model because it's not that far up, the next step up, to have micro tasks that are now part of, the digital foundation of, Scrum work or project-based work, and that's the next step. It's I think a huge gap. But if, to Mark's point, we start building in the quality quotient at this point, as we grow requesters and they get more and more comfortable with that relationship, they will then start, and as Demo is able to, they'll start leveraging us for quality work that is kind of macro, that's micro plus, that's now part of this macro work that they're doing. Again, if we're going to take the market force argument, let's look at it from a positive perspective as well, that that by shifting the dynamic, you can hopefully guide the whole platform into that arena. Speculating, of course. Alessandro, you have joined us. Good morning, evening, afternoon.
Welcome.
Oh. Alessandro, is your mic on? Maybe he stepped out. Well, when you arrive, chime in. Let us know you're here. So yeah, I think then kind of re-encapsulate. I think the Ghost Guild idea, it's just now a measure of measuring, because the more we're talking about this, I don't know. There's way too many variables. I think this needs to be a model, a computational model versus a human enterprise. I just don't know if we have. Yes, my wife for a computational model. I just don't know if we can. I don't want to say control the parameters, but have enough. Can we get enough people in the system, put enough work through that we can start measuring what we need to measure? And if we can't use humans, how interested is Bernstein going to be in a computational model?
We need an experiment of some sort that involves workers.
Well, we can do one. I mean, we can, the other, this is, I think, just one part, this is one type of guild.
Yeah.
And so if we validate this computational, I think Bernstein buys it if we have on the behind door number 2, we now have, we populate a human experiment, and we have high barriers to entry, no barriers to entry. We have, we put them through the paces. We test them out. We assess and evaluate them. We then do we do all the things that we would do computationally or algorithmically. We then do it a little more manually.
In this case, we could maybe use that Japanese translation one that I sent to you yesterday, because we could even run the experiment through MTurk to get somebody just out there who says they can do Japanese translations, but have one that's a little bit more detailed and specific to kind of, I don't know, gender and hierarchy translations to see what kind of results we get if somebody's a member of a guild and has support of other guild members versus somebody just out there saying they can translate Japanese, for example.
Yeah. The challenge is, can you speak Japanese? Can you read Japanese?
Yeah. But
you need to have that could be a lot of work because someone's going to have to be the human
to turn through it all. Yeah, actually, that would just be me doing the work too, wouldn't it? I mean, maybe that's not the best idea. Well, no, actually, I could use some of my friends too. We could look at the results. We could look at the results of the MTurk, like just the random person on MTurk who does the Japanese translation, and look at the results in Demo to see. I mean, it could be. I mean, that is something that we could measure.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Oh, Sandro, he's alive.
Welcome.
I just wanted
No, sorry, bud. Your mic is kind of fussing out.
Okay, I'll try to. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to make two questions. The first is two questions again. The first is do you possibly diversified offer of methodologies, like if you want, you can choose the mathematical averaging of the wage you're posting, and if you don't, you want to make an unfair wage for your request, you just use it. Like, and the worker would simply know that the requester is on the average level, or chooses to be like managed by an algorithm that calculates the average wage of the job that he's asking for, or the worker sees that the requester just selected the option to do not follow averages or fairness and propose its own wage that could be fair as much as unfair, but it simply doesn't follow any guideline. This is the first question. What do you think?
I think that modeling kind of dovetails in nicely with, I think, some of the approaches we're looking to at determining pricing. So I think we're all in the same. We're carrying the same idea. I think to your point, or to everyone's point, is that there's gonna be a lot of different ways you can tear that apart and rebuild it. But I think if we're going to start emphasizing quality versus price, versus have that be the emphasis, quality and then price versus what's done now, which is price and you get quality. You localize the number. You either work off an average or a median. I think that's, from a bare bones perspective, I think that works for us. It'll need to be stress tested, of course, because then you're going to have these issues where your guild has someone who's making $80 over here, and then someone over here who's making 8 cents. And so, the average is going to be a bit skewered as opposed to maybe using a median. But I think that's more of a geek out computational conversation later on. But the approach itself, I think, is what we're talking about.
I think also for kind of putting, what we're doing right now is kind of putting a premium on quality. As we're saying that if you want better quality work, then you might pay a little higher than what you would pay on, let's say, MTurk or Upwork or something. But I believe for requesters to actually make use of the system, they'll actually have to trust our system first. that our just saying that we'll provide better quality work isn't going to be enough to encourage them to actively post tasks and other stuff. They'll actually need to have some incentive to first try it out, see the results for, let's say, a couple of tasks, and then maybe kind of, when we build this trust with them that, okay, if you pay a slightly higher price, you get slightly better work. And so then they have some incentive to continue this trend and keep on paying a little higher than what, let's say, the average price for the task is across other platforms.
That's good. This brings us back to the question about quality to start with. Do we want some sort of assessment of some sort, whether it's just completing a quick task or interview or somebody looking at your skills portfolio or whatever before workers join the platform, so we can kind of set the benchmark for quality from the start? Or is it a free-for-all? Everyone join, doesn't matter what your quality is, and then we'll set you where you belong?
I think the latter is, having more of a free-for-all is probably a lot simpler in some ways. Because I think if we start to say, we start to enforce quality determinations, then I think things get really complicated. And you could easily favor aspects of workers that aren't necessarily aligned with quality, and sort of determining if you're doing that might be tricky. But so a thing that we talked about a little bit yesterday was this idea of patterns, and how patterns in both the requester side and the worker side end up being very indicative of specific types of work and sort of specific styles of working. And those could be really nice things to group around, and so on and so forth. But one of the earlier discussions about patterns was about this idea of how do you make common patterns as good as possible to benefit workers or to benefit requesters in any ways that are possible. So for example, I think a lot of the platforms out there, something like Mechanical Turk, it doesn't really help anyone have a better use of the service. And so it's really not doing anything to make other people's lives easier. But if we said, if we had some requester who comes in and says, I need these images done at this price, and we say, look, if you are going to ask that price, you're not going to get very good work. But we also tell them, and we see, we also say, we see that you're doing this kind of imaging work. We've identified basically the best way to get good imaging work done. And this is sort of a pattern, a sort of a metric, or maybe not a metric, but some kind of algorithm that you can use, and maybe we provide that as sort of a turnkey solution where they can say, all right, I need all these images processed. This is what I want seen in them. Go do it. And we can sort of manage the quality assurance to some extent when people are adhering to patterns and when people are paying at a certain price level. Why I bring this up is because I think there's an important purpose behind guilds, or behind this discussion, which is how do we make some way of grouping people in this environment improve the quality of service and the, let's say, enjoyment of use for both requesters and workers. It needs to be better for both for it to be agreeable, and it needs to be better probably both financially and quality focused, with some sort of quality focus. And so I think thinking about that, we also need to sort of consider the question we come back to, which is, do workers really care about quality? And maybe what we offer them is not just quality, but also some level of efficiency by integrating these kinds of aware features.
Something, the feeling that I have is that sometimes we go from considering a variable that is the fairness or the price or the quality, and then we end up going to the other variable, and we say, okay, but how can we do that is the perfect one? And then we go to the other variable, and when you go in these circles, it means you're figuring out how is the complexity, but you're missing something that is what do workers want and what do requesters want. So
I agree.
the idea that is behind the to the common pool resources that Trygve asked me sometimes, it's that you need to know the feelings of the workers and the feelings of the requesters, or more than the feelings, their behavior, to understand what is important and what is not. So the experimentation that you're talking about, it's absolutely correct, because when you experiment, you understand how they behave, and so you find the right solution. The tricky point is that the context that you have during the experimentation is a dynamic context, so it's going to change, and you would like chase the context, inventing new equations that maybe can be robust enough to last a year, 2 years, or 3 years, but the market may change, may move, and all that. So the idea could be that while you study the equations, you have a relationship with the workers and the requesters. Because in the reality, a very brilliant idea on how to solve all this can directly come from the workers or from the requesters. And the only thing that you have to do is not to spend all your time analyzing the data and finding the perfect solution, but listening to the ideas that people who like interact with the system way more deeply and within their lives, rather than you, that you are an observer, can give you the right idea, because they have an experience that is higher than yours. So you just merge that with your point of observation, and you may propose to them another idea, like in a dialogue. So this could be a different setup that doesn't blow your mind, that you try to collapse all the variables into something that has some sort of form or a shape, but you just try to interact with both the workers and the requesters, and you create a system that is not able to find the right price, the right quality, or the right something, but a system that is able to acquire the complexity, to acquire the needs of the workers as soon as they have them, and the needs of the requester, and tell the other side to see those needs and to express an opinion. And maybe they have the same need, like when we saw that in Mechanical Turk, the requester need not to be the last requester to reject a paper or a work for a worker. Like, they don't want to penalize so much the workers. So this need is shared by the requester and the workers. So it's a need that can become like a proposal. Like, we need like 10 or 100 rejection before pushing the worker out. So this methodology is simply asking the group that uses the platform for a need, asking the same thing that we are doing, but in a transparent way, in a relational way, in a dialogue way with the people.
Yeah, can I ask, have you managed to have a look at the back in the, was it the summer, Trygve, that you guys ran those questionnaires to all the requesters and all the workers and all the researchers to identify what they wanted from the system? With all our ideas.
I'm not sure they went out to requesters, Angela. I think at the time they only went to the researchers. That was one, but I think
just looking back,
Rajan sent something out.
because there was a you know, there was a lot of data for what workers said that they really wanted from the system, and a lot of exact examples what they said they wanted from the system. I think I've just pulled one
There
up.
is a list on the summary that I made. There is a list of their needs. And the
Yes,
list.
I saw that one, but this one was data that the researchers gathered by talking to a big group of workers and a big group of requesters. That was it gave a lot of insights into what their needs were, and
Okay. But what do you want to do out of that? What's the idea? Because I see you inspired, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, look, I suppose revisiting them again, and then just applying some design thinking surrounding what kind of environment we could provide on Demo that would meet the needs of the workers and requesters. Kind of like what we've done before, but you know, we've kind of moved forward and we've kind of decided what we think everyone needs. So maybe if we all just take a step back and look at the actual words from their mouths, what the requesters say again?
Because maybe we can find out that they don't want fairness, they don't care at all, or
Yeah, maybe yeah, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say maybe requesters.
Another example, like fairness, like they don't want quality. So
yeah, maybe for requesters, they really do just want cheap. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the thing that I want to underline is that they may want quality in 2016, and they may don't want quality in 2020. So the flexibility that Demo should have should be something that adapts to new class of workers, to new class of requesters, to a different economy, to a new type of dynamics. So if we manage to create a system that adapts to the needs, it would be a system that is just perfect today, but then, or perfect according to the ideas that we have and not the workers or the requester have. So like we imagine the perfect system that is like fair wages, like everything is enchanted, but for them it's not useful. I mean, the risk is that. So if we manage to invent a system that adapts, that is flexible and resilient, like that adapts to the needs according to the present needs, to the current needs that workers and it adapts proportionally. So, for example, if 20% of the requesters do not need quality, but the rest do, it should be able to have a double feature, like you click a button, you click a checkbox, and you say, I want quality. I don't need that. So according to the needs, you should have all the options on their hand, and they can just choose. We don't know what is their need on the long run. We just know what is their need today.
So I think an aspect of this is that by proposing a system that solves some problems today, especially one that relies on a market model to a degree to determine sort of what works, I think we allow it to be flexible into the future, and I think that's a really important thing to do, because obviously the needs of both sides are going to change over time, and so maybe what we need to talk about is a little bit more of a platform and sort of features on the platform level as opposed to features on sort of the specific worker and requester relationships. But all of that said, I'm not sure if this kind of reactivity is anything more than market awareness, right? Maybe it's just the ability for the market to have influence on people's experiences. So if slowly a certain group of people says, I'm just sick of paying for quality, they will start paying less, and as a result, pricing will have to go down, or whatever it might be. So I to an extent, I agree that we need to make it reactive, but I'm not sure if it needs to be reactive in sort of a conscious means, because I think that doesn't always necessarily work. But maybe it could be reactive in sort of a functional means, right? Depending on how people use the platform and depending on what is actually happening, it can sort of naturally evolve and naturally change as need be. But either way, I definitely think it's important to be reactive.
I mean, I think that the challenge in MTurk is that there's market forces that have been removed from the dynamic.
But I think a big difference with Mechanical Turk is I don't think they're trying anything to make it better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're letting market forces do something, but all the market forces are doing is finding a steady state price,
yep.
And really not doing anything else. There's no sort of feature change. There's no adaptation of the system except for the market clearing prices.
So I think we're in agreement that on some of these points about market forces. To interject, hi Pierre, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Sorry, I'm late. I missed your email. Hello, everybody.
So we have Mark, we have Angela, we have Alessandro, and Yash. Alessandro is in Europe. Angela is in England. Mark is in Pittsburgh. Yash is in New Delhi. I'm in Vermont. And Pierre, where are you? Are you in?
I am in Montreal.
Awesome. So, Pierre, if you have a second, you brought a very interesting. You brought the perspective of guilds in gaming, kind of your area of expertise, and that kind of kicked off our conversation on yesterday. And I was, I think, very probably not the best representative of some of your ideas. Wondering if you have a moment you can talk a little bit about, and you certainly heard some of our pricing conversations.
Yeah.
The guilds in gaming. Does that match up or marry with this pricing conversation that we had? Because we've been looking to maybe pull data out of MTurk and some other worker communities. This is a real dark horse. What if we pulled some modeling data out of some of these larger gaming communities? Just to be kind of wacky. But nevertheless, there's the conversation we've had about pricing. How does that jibe with your understanding and your use of guilds?
Yeah. I think an important point for, if we look at the requester point of view, is the fact that they may have a budget. And one point I try to reflect on was the fact that if we make price dynamics, people don't have anymore an idea of the cost, in fact, of working with the platform. And for some requesters, it's a big no, because they only have a limited sum to invest in the results and can't go higher to get the results. So maybe it could cause some of them to simply not use the platform anymore. One thing I found interesting is that there has been some experiment about motivating a crowd with a fixed sum of money. So some experiment in DARPA in particular has experimented with the best way to organize the distribution of a fixed sum of money in a crowd to obtain maximum motivation. And I think that guild could play the same role. I mean, mainly there is a fixed global amount for obtaining results, but guilds can organize the way this money is distributed among workers to get maximum attention and quality for result production for this amount. So we could have a competitive playground for multiple guilds with different systems to attribute money between the members and to compete against a requester with a fixed amount of capacity to get the best results for the money. And I think in this case, in fact, the guild function to the profit of the requester that helps to get the guild acceptable in the system, maintain the capacity of the requester to operate the platform with a fixed cost, and at the same time contribute to I would say the capacity for people to be correctly retributed, because I think that we could have an evolution for the correct pricing for a level of tasks, and at the same time the best way to distribute this price to a community.
So Pierre, how do you envision that happening? You know, do you have some internal mechanisms on the distribution of funds, or
Yeah, they should have a rule for that. So a guild mainly get some tools in the platform to be able to distribute the prices according to tasks that are selected by the guild. So the guild as a community is responsible for the results. They should deliver, and they take an engagement to deliver in a certain amount of time. Basically, from the requester point of view, their unique correspondent is the guild. Then the guild uses internally defined distribution of money, and they should have the tool to collect the money from the requester, then distributing among members to produce results. Of course, if some people take advantage of this system to get the money for them, first we should have some regulation in place. I mean, if some rules are broken inside the guild, of course the guild will collapse very rapidly, but at the same time we should be able to react against scams. So that needs to introduce a little delay between guild attribution of money and actual delivery of money in the platform, for people being able to react if they think they are robbed, in fact, by their own guild. But a buffer, in my opinion, is a way to put that in place, because I distribute the money, then I ask for the real money to arrive to account. If there is a period of time, you are able to validate, in fact, this distribution. And then we let the system evolve. I mean, guilds are free to organize the distribution of money as they want. So there is a competition between guilds and between attraction, their capacity of attraction of the good people, depending on the way they distribute the money inside the guild and the way it converges to something that is useful for their participant. At the same time, that open some leeway to retribute people that work for the guild, but not directly for tasks. Because of course you need to make the guild functioning, you need to retribute people that are middlemen in the guild, or these people have no practical use for the requester from the requester point of view. So they are not retributed by working for tasks. But as the guild manages the whole money that is involved in task resolution, they could maybe capture some percent of this money to retribute people that makes the guild functioning.
Interesting. Okay. Is that the way you have deployed guilds in your gaming world, or is there an article or some theory behind that?
I am looking for a theory of virtual money distribution in guilds. I have not found anything as of today, but in gaming guilds, part of the you know, when you win some games, you collect money, virtual money in the game. So basically, guilds have the capacity to have a common hoard that is built by the players, and use this hoard to retribute players that benefit the guild, or even help some members that have local difficulties. So that's a mechanism that is in place for in good guilds.
In your guilds, one of the things that I'm sorry, Angela, I saw you went off. You have a question?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about what Pierre just mentioned there about the virtual money, and Alessandro mentioned, I think it was last week, about that Ethereum kind of I suppose it's kind of a Bitcoin type money, where I think it's Ethereum. Is that the one, Alessandro, that you mentioned last week?
The Swiss company?
Ethereum is a way to construct a blockchain system. So it is not a currency.
But it's not a type of cryptocurrency where you can issue tokens?
No, the blockchain is the infrastructure. So mainly it's the open ledger mechanism. You don't have to associate any kind of money with that. You only have to. It's a way to have a database, distributed database of interaction. If I am correct.
Right.
Okay, you should think about blockchain of a shared Excel file on Dropbox. If you edit it, everybody would know. So nobody is going to edit that file without. Like if I want to change some parts and bribe and corrupt something, everybody would know, so it's impossible to me to do it.
Right,
That's
right.
blockchain, okay? That's blockchain. It's highly more complicated, but it's basically blockchain. While a cryptocurrency is a currency that is not like you cannot know who is paying and who is not paying. That's a cryptocurrency. Then you have Bitcoin, that is a cryptocurrency that is based on blockchain. So these are the things that we have. And Ethereum is a company that allows you to build a blockchain, so something structured in a way that nobody can alter it. Build a blockchain that is going to be used for any purpose, like for contracts, even for jobs, for anything in which you need to have an Excel file that lists everything that is going on, and once it writes it down, nobody is able to edit it. So, for example, it could be used for having a transparent system of house rentals, that once you get an agreement with the landowner or the apartment owner. You decide, I will pay you $300 every week, I don't know, and that is going to finish in this Excel file that says person A is going to pay $300 a week to person B, and it has happened 3 times till now. So nobody can deny that. So the dynamics, the legal dynamics of that are way more simple, because you cannot say, hey, you didn't pay me, there is no movement in the bank, and all that stuff. So Ethereum simply provides the blockchain and makes you have a blockchain powered system for anything, but it doesn't give you, as far as I know.
I thought, I was just looking at the site after you sent me the link last week, and I think as you scroll down on that webpage, I just posted it in the channel, their example of number 4 says that you can design and issue your own cryptocurrency, so you can decide on your own token, and
yeah, you can do that, of course.
Is that something that we would want to look at a little bit more closely for this, if we're looking at the guild structure to kind of take the money from the requester and distribute it to workers depending on where they live, the kind of the value that they get depending on where they live? Is that something that could work?
Oh, yeah, you can use that system, but you use that system not as a cryptocurrency. Otherwise, you have to create a wallet that exchange the local currency, because if you have a bank account, you have the bank account has a currency. So if you pay in dollars, American dollars, and not or Australian dollars, the bank is going to change the American dollars into Australian dollars if the requester is American and the worker is Australian. So basically, if you put on Demo a cryptocurrency, you will need the bank to translate American dollars to Demo dollars and then to Australian dollars. So it's just a passage more, so it's not very useful. While if you use a cryptocurrency to give some sort of quality money inside of Demo, I don't like it, but it could be something like, I give you 5 of my 10 quality Demo money to you because you did the best work for me. And then he can give quality money to a requester that was very clear in its job request. But I don't know how it's gonna work, and it could be very instrumental reciprocating. So I give you 5, so you give me 5, and stuff like that. I don't know. So I don't know what have you in mind. But if I can change a little bit the subject and then get back, I wanted to ask Pierre, Pierre. You said that somebody made an experiment and they understood that there was a way to get the maximum motivation out of the crowd in which they made the experiment. Can you type the paper that tells this story, just for our reference? And
if you look at the page, the wiki page created by Trygve on guilds, I put a reference for a science article that described this experiment, and in particular the way the MIT team who was winning the contest organized himself.
That was the Iyad Rawan piece on DARPA?
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting article. And Iyad Rawan really...
The reference milestone is which one?
Like
the wiki page?
I'll pull it out. I'll post it on the
Side chat. Okay.
Yeah, so we can all get it.
So,
I'm going to do a little housekeeping today because we've got a lot of ideas scattered all over the place.
yeah. So basically,
So,
to get back to Angela, but I guess she went away.
She had to take the kids to school.
Oh, okay. But to get back to where Angela was heading, if like the blockchain is needed to make things, if it's a private, like a crypto blockchain, let's say, it won't say the names, but it will be a very strong system to guarantee the functionality in a very legal way. And the other usefulness of the blockchain would be to be, if it's public, to have a very strong transparency effect on all the job dynamics. So this is the way blockchain can be useful for demo. But I don't know if demo needs it. I don't really know. It's up to you guys. I mean, I'm thinking about other things now.
Just maybe a comment. If we consider the fact that we need to have transparency inside the guild of the way money is distributed between members, it would be certainly useful to have authenticated mechanisms to make public the transfer of money inside the guilds.
Internal mechanisms. That may be where it works.
Yeah.
But it's all transparent, so you're going to have, it's only a new revolution that people know what other people make and are okay with it. But there's going to be a gap somewhere, so folks are just going to have to deal with it.
That's fundamentally necessary for the trust, because you can't have a system where you basically are part of a group that contract for you, and you don't know what they do with the money when you work for them. That's an enterprise that's working because there is a lot of control of legal management of the finance of the company. Here, you don't want this kind of red tape, so you need to publish everything.
So, Pierre, to kind of circle back a little bit, because one of the gaps that I think we're beginning to understand is that we're looking at creating either task or skill-based guilds. We're having them coalesce around a task or a skill. And as Mark has been pointing out, we're looking to create, conditions and where all parties benefit. But for a guild to do that, does there need to be more than just the work? Are there some ties that bind that need to exist outside the work relationship in order for this? Is that part of the secret sauce, or can we just strip it all down and have it be just about the work and leave it at that?
If you take games as an example, guilds are no outside raison d'être, if you want, than just be organized inside the game. People don't interact at all on private back channel from the game. Maybe you could have guilds that are built upon the fact that people know each other before building the guild, but it's very uncommon and not necessary at all. Maybe that's a reason why the guild in games are not very stable. People are only motivated by the game objectives. If the the attention span is very short, and people could move from one guild to the other. One point I tried to mention in comments, was the fact I wonder if it would be interesting to have people be able to partake in different guilds at the same time, maybe with different virtual identity, but I don't see why you should forbid this kind of sharing.
Personality disorder.
So
yes, exactly.
We've talked about that a little bit, especially if the guilds are related to something like the experience that you have with a certain type of task. Then you might have experience with several different types of tasks, and each of those experiences, all your experience in image tasks, all your experience in HTML tasks, those would offer you participation in perhaps separate guilds that offer sort of separate benefits.
I agree.
You said something that is very interesting to me, which is that basically your experience in gaming guilds is that there's not a lot of socialization outside of the context of trying to play the game, better, trying to win more, let's say. So I guess I think of two things there. One is I'm not sure what our workers or our requesters are trying to win. Do you think that there is a sort of straightforward metric or a straightforward way to describe what it is that a guild in this environment might offer to our participants? Maybe more money, maybe higher quality work, but I'm not sure, and I'm just sort of interested in that. But the other thing is, do you think that guilds offer a kind of social support, even though they may not be talking and having sort of a friendship network through the guild, but do you think people sort of, for example, they play a game and they complain to each other about one person that they were playing against, and they say, oh, that person was really annoying, and they're all like, yeah, I agree, he was really annoying, or whatever it might be. Is there this level of kind of social support that we might benefit from in this domain, where workers might agree that a certain requester is bad, and that might be a really good signal for us, or workers might agree that some workers are underpricing, or whatever it might be, doing tasks for too little money, and we need to do something about that.
I see three benefits from guilds. The first one is that gives worker a capacity to represent more than themselves in the system, and basically for me it's a problem because requesters represent a large number of tasks by themselves, worker not. So basically you can't have a balance in relationship when you represent nothing in economic term in a relationship. So that's the first point. Second point is the fact that I was very impressed by the fact that for workers, their reputation, even a few slight in their reputation, has very dear consequences for the capacity to find good jobs on mTurk. So they are typically they are very afraid to lose reputation. For me, guilds is a way to buffer the system for users. If a user is not directly in contact with a requester, he can't have his reputation as badly destroyed by the requester than if he partake in guilds. If there is a kind of buffering that is in place due to the guild.
Yeah, that's interesting. This idea of a guild as a proxy, sort of a collective proxy. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Keep going.
And the third point for me is the fact that when you are in a guild and when you are new in the system, you don't have the experience to behave correctly. So basically, a guild is a way, and it's true for gaming, it's a way to speed up the learning curve of everybody. So you are up to speed more easily. You share information about the way the system functions between people more easily. If you think to have, for example, plugins to better work with the platform, you know them from the beginning because the guilds told you, okay, please install this kind of plugins, this kind of plugins. That's the best way to work on the platform. For a new people, it's very important. So for me, that's the three basics services I would get from a guild.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. Yeah, I think that's something that we should think about.
Instead of calling them tasks, we'll call them quests.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, exactly.
Give it a little more of that epic journey kind of thing. Make it a little more romantic even.
Yeah, life is a journey.
So I have one more, maybe many more, but one more right now. Question about guilds and gaming. Are there people who deliberately avoid guilds because of social discomfort or some other kind of perception of quality? Like somebody who thinks they're an incredibly good player, will they like deliberately play without a guild? Or somebody who really hates talking to people. And I know that this is a lot of the people working in Mechanical Turk are people who just don't want to go outside that much and would rather do some work that they can do quite alone. Do you think having forced socialization is a problem? And do you see that as something that has any dynamics in the gaming side?
In a game, you have, and the paper I post on guild dynamics in game shows that there is two things. First, there is a lot of people that don't partake in guild at all. In fact, there are a lot of one-people guild. I mean, because they don't want to say to the others that they don't partake in a guild, but they don't want. Second, the more experienced the player, the more the greater the chance he is in a guild. Because in fact, at some level of play, you cannot play the game if you are not really in a guild, because you need to have very balanced group of players to succeed in some quests.
So that's an aspect that I think we don't usually see in microtasks at this point. And maybe we will in the future, but right now, on the level of microtasks, I don't know if there's any intrinsic benefit of being in a group, except that maybe pricing is better and maybe we can argue for better pricing, but we're not more rounded out, right? We don't need a balanced team necessarily with these microtasks. But anyway.
Sure, I don't think there is no reason to have a compulsory mechanism for people to be in part of a guild.
Yeah, cool. Interesting.
So we still haven't answered the question, do we need guilds? And as a fly on the wall, I haven't had that aha moment yet.
So, sorry,
just one point. There is a creation of Turkopticon, that's right?
Yeah, Turkopticon.
That's, for me, that's a guild. That's a kind of guild mechanism.
Yeah, I agree. So I wonder, is the research question that question? Do we need guilds? Or is the research question something a little bit more about how we could use guilds or how we could design guilds to benefit both the workers and the requesters? Or maybe a sort of less ambitious research question might be, do current guilds benefit researchers and requesters, such as Turkopticon? Maybe somebody's already done that study. I'm not sure, but
I think a very important point for me is the economics of crowdsourcing. What I see currently when I first look at the system is a very unbalanced system that seems to me deemed to become more and more unbalanced in time. because you have people with very different expectation of the level of money they could get. You have competition between, for example, American people and Indian people, and it's of course evident that if you live in India, you don't need the same amount of money to make a living. Second, you have all the power in the end of requester, and we have heard from interview from requesters coming from the academic field. But if I consider that you can have any kind of enterprise that could ask for work from the platform, for me they would of course take advantage of this imbalance. And we have seen that people are completely afraid of losing reputation. So requesters have a very strong capacity of retaliation against people in the platform today. So basically everything is, I would say, strongly unbalanced and should lead to less and less money, less and less quality. That's the dynamics. I think an interesting question of research is, could we introduce some mechanism that change the natural dynamics of evolution in such a system to something that is quality-oriented, fair-waged, and remain stable in this state? I mean, that you don't enforce anything. You simply introduce mechanisms that makes the system evolve naturally in this direction.
I think to specify that maybe just a little bit more, we might say, could we introduce a mechanism of grouping or something like that? Not because I don't think there's other kinds of mechanisms, but just because I think it helps to be a little specific.
Sure.
But yeah. Yeah.
Sure, that's the idea. That the guild could be the way to stabilize the system.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's interesting. I think I should probably go soon. I have a lot of other stuff to do. But this was a very good chat, and I think we're going to do something very interesting.
Maybe one point. How do you think we should organize to meet the requirements of this week as a milestone? Because I think we have reached a very I would say critical steps. That's now we have to select what we do next, and for the article also. So maybe we need to make some to have some action to make sure that we succeed.
And your answer to that question is tonight at 11 o'clock. I'm going to post it. Bernstein is going to, we're going to share some of these ideas with him, and he'll guide us and prod us and poke us to go down the primrose path. So yeah, that is the next step. After that, we're going to need to, kind of pick up all the pieces and start, bringing a deeper dive into what sort of experimentation are we going to do, blah, blah, blah. There's just going to be tons of stuff. But I agree with Mark. I think we started off over here. I think we're in a much cooler spot over here. So I want to thank you both for joining. If you could join us tonight, I think that'd be very, very helpful. Just sharing our mental model with the good doctor. And so if you need anything, post it on the channel. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your days, guys. Stay warm, stay cold, stay awesome.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
See you
guys.
Thank you.
Ciao.